Since the pandemic, we've been hearing so much about vaccines. But what if I told you there was an effective and delicious way to vaccinate? We're talking edible vaccines. So what even is a vaccine? Well, what a vaccine essentially does is it teaches your body how to recognize and fight against germs. This can be done through foods through genetic modifications. By modifying a plant, we therefore create modified products. So if we genetically engineer a plant to recognize and fight against germs, then the fruits produced by it will also have these properties. This process has two parts. In part one, we transform a bacteria cell so that it has the genetic DNA on how to recognize and fight against these germs. And in part two, we take that bacteria and use it to infect a plant cell so that the plants now have these properties. So let's get into this process. In part one, we start with a genetic sequence, which is the piece of DNA that has the ability to recognize and fight against these germs. We then take an agrobacterium cell and extract the plasmid, which is a circular piece of DNA. Next, we cut this plasmid using restriction enzymes that recognize specific nucleotide sequences and cut at those locations. Then we attach the genetic sequence to the plasmid, creating a new modified plasmid, and finally we put that back into the original agrobacterium cell, creating a new modified cell. For part two, we start by taking a plant leaf of any kind, for example a banana leaf, and cutting it into microscopic pieces. We then add that to a petri dish, along with the bacteria cells we created in part one. Once there, the bacteria cells will insert themselves into the plant cell's cytoplasm, and then transform the plant's genome. This plant has now been genetically modified, and it undergoes mass cell division until it's big enough to be potted. Once potted, the plant will start producing fruits, and the fruits produced have the ability to recognize and fight against germs. Using this method, scientists have been able to vaccinate against diseases like dengue, Ebola, and tuberculosis. And you never know, your next shot might come in a tasty package.